How's everyone doing? How many people went to the general counsel session this morning? Great. I was last week talking to one of Erin Mazzaros at Sutherland's clients at Sutherland, one of her alumni who's now a client who left after being an associate. And after talking to so many in-house counsel for so many years, I'm still surprised by what clients tell me about what their life is like and what they expect. And the alum from Sutherland, she said to me, if I was still at the firm in any given day, I would be billing to 100 different matters. That's the life of an in-house counsel. So I'm Nat Slavin, Laura Maherg, Wicker Park Group. We're here to talk to you today a little bit about our experiences of what clients think, what clients' expectations are.
Great. So at the end of the day, and I don't know if Tara's in here, our business partner, she's in the back row. She likes to say, for those of you who have other things to do today, this next slide is the Cliff Notes version. If the only thing you walk away with today is these 3 points, then it's fine. You can tweet away, deal with work at the office, or leave to go to another session. But the 3 things we hear clients say they want is, I need you to fix my problem. While you're fixing my problems, I want you to make my life easier, and not good enough, you've got to be pleasant to work with. I want to work with you more because you're somebody that I enjoy talking to. And you think about this technology that's in front of all of us right at this very minute. It was supposed to, when I started my career, there was no technology like that. And the addition of it to our lives was supposed to free us up and have us be away from work more often. What has it done? Does anybody think that technology has made them work less and be able to have more free time to spend doing your hobbies and with your loved ones and friends? No, the reality is it's made us all work more. So when you're spending time in conversation, in dialogue, in text and emails, and in communication with your clients, you want it to be people that you like, because that's where we're spending most of our time. So unfortunate byproduct of what's going on.
We decided that we, despite Laura's kind of semi-aversion to technology, would try the polling aspect. So if everybody has their iPhone, iPad, or Android device and can log in to the LMA app, how many people have the app loaded on their phone? Great. So after we talk about our common themes, what we hear from the clients, what they want, their real world experiences, we're going to give you a couple of case studies towards the end to talk with your neighbor sitting next to you to help solve a problem that your client might be facing, that your firm might be facing based on what a client's need is. And then we're going to give you some best practices at the end. But I'm going to try, I'm an Apple person, have been for 30 years. I'm going to touch a Windows machine right here. Go into your device, log on to this session, and at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you will see a little icon. I believe it's a thought bubble on an iPhone and maybe a thumbs up. We need you to type in what you think your client's most pressing concerns are this year. And as you type those in, at the bottom hit submit, and we'll see what.
Look, all these people went to the GC panel. They were listening.
This year, we decided that after 8 years of talking to a couple thousand in-house counsel, business executives, business owners, Fortune 500 CEOs, that we would start going back and looking at our data, all of the surveys that we've, all of the interviews we've done, and try and answer the same question. We'll share some of our findings for you in just a minute. So I'm going to close this. Everybody good?
Everybody done?
Is there anything that somebody that doesn't have the polling app open, anything we're missing here? Just shout it out. Budget, cost, price, value. Data, very important topic. We're hearing more and more desire from in-house counsel and the executives that they report to and work with that they need more data. Less is a super important theme. Less time, less resources. less money.
I like that predictability, and I think the panel talked about that. Sometimes it's really more important for them to know what to expect rather than to even have the lower cost.
Okay, well, thanks for participating. We're going to have one more of these in just a second.
So look, you guys are so smart.
That's exactly some of the same theme. That's exactly some of the themes that we hear most often. Value, cost, transparency. Just tackling the first one, value. This is a really squishy topic. Sometimes when we ask clients, what do they value from outside counsel? The kind of thing that doesn't show up on a bill. We hear things like CLE. We hear things like alerts, industry updates, keeping us informed of what some of their other clients are doing that we should know about so they can do their job better, make their life easier. I asked one in-house counsel relatively recently, though, a really important question. I wasn't sure if I could pull it off. He's the chief compliance officer of one of the top global banks. And I said, I feel like there's something that you want to talk about that maybe we haven't touched on. So let me try asking this. At the end of the day, when you think about success with all of your peers internally at the company, well, what's your bonus based on? And I actually could tell that that was something that had come up thematically earlier on. He said, I'm so glad you've asked. I've never been asked that question by an outside counsel or anybody on behalf of a firm before. And I have 3 criteria for my bonus, and they are set out at the beginning of the year. And the success of those 3 things, if I accomplish all those 3 things, I get either 100% of my bonus, 60% of my bonus, or 30% of my bonus, or 0. And not only does it affect my pocket, literally, everybody, the 500 people that are in the legal and compliance group at this bank, know how I stack up against those stated goals. So if your law firm attorneys know how those kinds of things impact the life of your client, you have a much better chance of lining their goals with your goals.
And cost. I think everyone recognizes the pressures that in-house counsel are under to do that. I don't think we recognize how intense it is. And building on what Nat just said about how are you evaluated and compensated, I've had in-house counsel tell me if law firms do not work within the budgets they provide me and cause me to go over the budgets I've provided internally, then that impacts my personal compensation. So that may mean I don't get the bonus to take my children on a Disney cruise this year or vacation, or I am not able to pay private school tuition. So when the pain point is really high when it hurts their personal pocket. I started doing client feedback interviews in 1998. And I know it was a long time ago and nobody else was doing a lot of client interviews back then. And really, back then, not any of the in-house counsel, not any of the other clients that we talked about really mentioned cost as a concern or an issue. So the change in this span of time has been really dramatic. The word transparency, what does it mean to you? Maureen, can I put you on the spot?
Yeah, transparency is that they know exactly what you're doing all the time. No surprises.
Perfect. Okay, so Maureen said transparency means the clients are knowing what you're doing at all times, so there's no surprises. Back in 1998 and prior to that, and really probably even up until the early 2000s, there were a lot of clients that were perfectly satisfied to hand off a matter to a law firm, to a partner they trusted, and send them back behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz, and have all the little magic happen out of sight. And they didn't really know how their matter was being staffed. Today, clients want to not just know, many of them want to actively participate. I interviewed an in-house counsel with a very large energy company, and he said, when it comes to litigation, what outside counsel don't realize is I'm often the one driving the matter. We used to send it to outside counsel to have them drive and lead it, but what I'm doing now is staffing my team with very diverse experts, and I'm going to pick the best person for that specific component of the matter, whether or not they're in my primary law firm or not. So I might have an environmental expert, a general litigator, an e-discovery vendor involved, and that's my team, and I'm leading that team. So the whole notion of project management, which I know there was a great pre-con session on that, is taking that a little bit step further. Clients want to understand who's working on their matters, why you've chosen to staff it a certain way. And one of my favorite client interviews, or it wasn't even an interview, it was a panel I did for another conference. A partner from Quinn Emanuel participated with one of his key trusted clients. And he said, the client said, I really love about this guy is that he lets me see the sausage making. And that's really important to me, to understand how the sausage is made.
2 weeks ago, when I was talking to the Deputy General Counsel of a entertainment industry related company, he said to that very point, you know what, why this is my favorite relationship? Because this outside counsel, this litigator, knows how to make me look good, so I can make my chief legal officer look good, so we can make the CEO look good, so the CEO can look like a hero every day to the board of directors. That's my job, and if they make my life easier, it makes me look good, and it flows up from there. And it really comes down to the differentiation that happens in every relationship. Other in-house counsel may play a very different role, and you have to understand what is important to them. Sometimes it's, timeliness might be the most important thing. On that point, another common thing we hear is a deadline is when something needs to be done, but how much time do I need to think about it? Remember that in-house counsel that has 100 different things that they're working on every day? How much time does she have to think about how she can add value to that interaction? How are your firm's lawyers understanding the individual client's needs to make their life easier?
All right, this is one of my new favorite statistics. Tara and I just went to see Union Square Hospitality Group. Anybody familiar with Danny Myers and Union Square Hospitality? Great book recommendation. As an aside, is his book called Setting the Table. And like great companies, Disney, service companies like Disney and Ritz-Carlton, Danny has realized that other businesses can learn from what they do so well at their restaurants, Gramercy Tavern, Union Square Cafe, the Shake Shack. So we spent a half a day in New York at Union Square Hospitality's headquarters to participate in their hospitality quotient customer service training, and they shared this statistic. And are all of you familiar with Nielsen ratings, market research? I interviewed a bunch of in-house counsel at a bank in Colorado one time, and they said, we're so glad you're here because we hire Nielsen to come in and do customer surveys for us. So great information, but they said 92% of customers worldwide trust recommendations over all other forms of advertising in 2014. Let me say that again because Dan Pink said it was very important to repeat things. 92% of consumers worldwide trust recommendations over all other forms of advertising. In 2007, that was 74%, so a pretty dramatic increase. Think about your law firm, and Jeffrey, I'm going to put you on the spot, sorry. When you think about Baker Donaldson and one of its greatest clients, how did that client come to the firm? Through a recommendation. Brian, think about your firm's greatest client, Ms. Levin. How did they come to the firm? A recommendation. Anybody got any other idea on how clients come to the firm? No.
We'll acknowledge there's about 8% that come some other ways, but it
8%.
Really is. It's a recommendation.
We are in a relationship-heavy, referral-based business. Every client we interview, we ask, who are your most trusted outside counsel relationships? How did you come to select those firms to work with? Almost every single client responds, I call somebody I know, like, and trust, and ask them who they would recommend. So, thinking about the energy and effort you're spending in allocating your marketing resource dollars, a really important thing to look at. But why do you think that change has increased so dramatically? Curious, anybody? From 74% in 2007 to 92%. And this is consumers worldwide, so not necessarily law firms. Yes?
Something to do with the internet.
It's true. That's it. I mean, my husband is a restaurateur. My obsession with food was really great when I married him last year because we eat well all the time now, and it's not just me eating by myself. But you think about it, everybody's a critic. Everybody's a food critic. You go to, where do you go? Open Table, TripAdvisor, Yelp. All businesses have far more options for people to provide feedback in very public forums about the experience they have with your product or service.
And like Dan Pink said yesterday, don't just believe us. We think about what matters to the client all day, every day, and we try and help the firms we work with shorten that distance between assumption and reality about the clients. So we're sharing our experiences from all the interviews we've done, but when we look at the research that's out there, it's a little bit, I won't say specious, but there is some questionable data that gets thrown out there. We do admire the work that the Association of Corporate Counsel does, and so we pulled from their 2015 Chief Legal Officer study. This is about as clean information and least subjective information that's out there. It's not about brand, it's not about position, it's not actually about the law firm. This is about the client's expectations and what's going on with them. So we wanted to share a few highlights of them. Obviously, first on the list is alternative fee arrangements. We're going to reveal some of our own findings from the interviews we've done in just a few minutes, but very, very, very close. 20% are talking about alternative fee arrangements. That's only up from 12%. The proportionate amount of time that firms are spending and talking about alternative fee arrangements versus the reality of the implementation of alternative fee arrangements is a massive gap. It doesn't mean that the clients don't want to be involved in that conversation, but there's still to this day, and I've been talking to in-house counsel for 25 years, there is still to this day confusion about what that means. A discount is not an alternative fee. It is just a discount off an hourly bill. So flat fees are the most significant alternative fee arrangements. When we looked at the findings, their top priorities, ethics and compliance, still in a post-Sarbanes-Oxley world where everybody is shining a spotlight on everything they do, in-house counsel are overwhelmed by how often they have to worry about ethics, compliance, and its distant cousin, regulatory. We're also hearing more and more, and actually witnessing the I guess, increased role, the elevated role of the internal legal department operations manager. So as much as your firms are trying to bring in project management, experts on fee arrangements, legal departments are actually trying to do the same thing. Quick tip, if your legal department, if your client's legal department have this position and you have this at your firm, connect those two people. They're trying to solve the same problem. Get them together. Think about that, the power of that opportunity. They're concerned about some skills that they need to work on, skills that all of us need to improve in our life. In-house counsel are no different. Project management, how to speak and work with your executives and how to have presence around that. Core business management, communication skills. There's very little change in staffing that's happening at the legal departments. They continue what started in 2008 into 2009, where legal department budgets were held, staffing. I can't tell you how many companies we visit where we hear a version of, we always keep a position open because still, even with the improved economy, we don't know when we're going to have to reduce overhead. So we're working down one person. That's an opportunity for your firms as well. They're only spending 32% of their time providing legal advice and managing the internal legal matters. That skews much higher up the food chain. So chief legal officers are answering that question. I'm only spending about a third of my time on legal, substantive legal work and advice. Budgets aren't changing.
Budgets are not changing. We've just done kind of a rash of about 10, 15 interviews in a very short time span, mostly focused on litigation. And one of the questions that we've been asking is, for strategic planning purposes for a firm's litigation group, how do you see your need for outside counsel changing? And your utilization. And everybody's like, not at all. We're trying to do as much as we can in-house, but there's not a lot of growth going on in staff and departments. Then this statistic is not on the slide, but I found it pretty fascinating. LawPro, which is the Lawyer Professional Indemnity Company, professional liability insurance, had some really interesting statistics in some of their research. And what I found fascinating was the most frequent cause of malpractice claims against law firms. Are you ready? What do you think they are? Anybody got one? Because they're just bad lawyers? That's why they're getting sued? Kevin? Number one answer, poor communication. Okay? Anybody else got another one? Come on, these are low softballs. You can get it. No, billing disputes is not on there, but a time management. We didn't meet the deadline. How easy is that? You know, it's pretty crazy. The bar can be really low in a lot of these final interviews. And my personal favorite, and I think it ties to communication too, is failing to understand what's really going on with the situation or failing to dig deeper. So the client calls and needs something handled, and the law firm doesn't really sit down and talk to them about what's going on. So they're failing to dig deeper. So a third of all are poor communication, though. So 70% of claims, repeating again just for you because it's not in the notes, are related to poor communication, bad time management, and failing to understand what's really going on or to dig deeper in the situation. And it's lawpro.com. You can find the research. On that slide previously, there was some discussion about the legal department staff development, and 17% of the chief legal officers that were surveyed in ACC survey said staff development, the professional development of their own department and team, is one of their top 3 priorities for 2015. And that was a significant increase and something that we've been hearing a lot lately. And actually just a few weeks ago interviewed one of those operations managers or legal department administrative professionals. And she said that this was also a concern for them. But they're looking at expanding the depth of the expertise in their law department, because when you think about the average legal budget is about 70% going to outside counsel. So 70% of the overall legal budget is going to outside counsel. When they need to cut dollars, where are they going to go? The biggest bucket, which is what they're spending with outside counsel. So more and more clients want to bring work in-house and want to cultivate very specific expertise and experts, and then they want to go out to outside counsel for expertise as well. But they want these teams who can do more work internally because it's just more cost efficient. So I loved these. Executive presence. We're all, as Daniel said yesterday, you know, we're all selling something. And that's an in-house position as well. And a lot of the alumni interviews that we do, we ask people, you know, what do you wish you'd known when you were in private practice now that you're a client? What is the kind of driving force behind why you left private practice to go be in-house counsel? And they said, because of the dramatic pressures to develop business in law firms. They don't want to sell. But they do recognize I have to sell my ideas internally. I have to sell my recommendations internally. So it's important that executive presence, what kind of an impression are their team members making within their company? And then again, the basics, the business management, communication and listening skills, and project management. Getting back to that whole transparency factor.
And as the in-house counsel think more and more about executive presence and what that means, they're thinking about it, they're thinking about your lawyers as well. I cannot tell you how many times we've heard the horror story of someone coming in to talk to their client, having no idea what the client's business is, not being prepared, not having that presence, not exuding confidence, not understanding those issues that are so critically important. If outside counsel can't cleanly communicate what they're trying to do, you know, Daniel Pink yesterday said, we've got to shift the thinking from problem solving to problem finding. I think Laura and I would strongly disagree. The lawyers that we work with shouldn't be in the problem finding business, but they should be issue spotting, identifying potential risk. And that's really a big part of it. What kind of image, what kind of presence do your lawyers have when they go meet with their clients? Are they prepared to say, we've seen what's going on in your industry, and we have confidence that these are 2 or 3 of the key things that you should be thinking about because your peers in like industries are thinking about the exact same things.
Okay, now can I go off script to tell a story?
This is scripted?
Okay. All right, so I am in a law firm in Texas, meeting with the partners whose clients I'm going to interview to get up to speed on the relationship. And there are some lawyers in other offices whose clients were on the list and were going to participate. And everybody was delightful, you know, suits, handsome, charming, nice dresses. Everything was great in the Texas office. And then they video conference this guy in, and this is all about executive presence. So this is a true story. You can't make this stuff up. They bring this guy in, video conference in a conference room in their New York office, litigator, really impressive resume. He's wearing jeans, a polo kind of shirt that's not tucked in. He sits back in the big conference chair on the corner of the table, kicks his feet up on the desk, and he's barefoot. The chief marketing officer was in the room with me when this was going on, and the look on his face was utter and complete horror. And not to mention, the guy was a complete and total jerk. Profanity, you know, talk about drink, you know, what do you mean the relationship? We just go out and party. I mean, it was a horrifying experience. And I sat there and thought, okay, wait a minute. He's not really thinking, because I sit down and talk to in-house counsel at least 3 days a week. They ask us our opinions of law firms and recommendations too. Does he think I'm ever going to suggest him to be a prospect for a client? So, absurd example, but it struck me.
We talked a little bit, I mentioned a couple of times, repetition, that we've been analyzing all the interviews we've done. We don't have statistical data in the sense where we're asking yes and no questions when we do an interview. It's a conversation. You know, every individual client has a different set of needs, and every one of those interviews, every one of those conversations takes a different tone. The outcome, though, however, is very consistent, and that's where we started today with some of the common themes. So we literally looked back through the last 800 interviews we've done from 2011 to 2014 and identified 15 or 16 the most common topics discussed, some of the things we're talking about today. And I'm about to show you a teaser to our results. But we looked at things like value, communication, being proactive. These are prompted and unprompted mentions of these very important criteria, the kind of thing that doesn't necessarily easily translate into numbers. So in those critical performance areas, the most important nugget from the period of 2011 to 2014 on these common themes, this is the relative importance of each of these topics to those 800 people that we interviewed from 2011 to 2014.
So, what strikes you looking at this bar chart? Value. Look at the increase. It's almost doubled. So from just over 40% to 76% in a span of 3 years. That is one of the most critical performance areas that clients are looking for. And does somebody have an example of demonstrating good value as it relates to a fee outcome? Kevin, you sat on the front row. Sorry, you got picked on.
That's okay. Well, I can think of a partner. I'm not sure it's increase the value of the fee, but I know that.
Or the value to the client, the outcome.
There's a partner who was always looked upon with great reverence by his other partners, who, with his main client, every month would visit the client with the firm's pre-bills for matters for that client. And the two of them together went through the bills. And the client got to watch the partner eliminate certain lines. Oh, you shouldn't have to pay for this, you shouldn't have to pay for that. And it truly became legendary and a reference that that client would share with his peers in the industry. And there were a number of new clients that came simply because of the added service that this partner provided.
I'll quickly summarize for those of you that didn't hear what Kevin just said. Before the bill goes out, go talk to before the relationship partner is going to send a bill, particularly when it's that big bill, the unexpected bill, the surprising bill, the bill that was either going to be vastly different in a good way or bad way. Spend time talking to the client. Some clients will do a version of that, which is write a cover memo. If you write a cover memo on the bill that says, we projected fees to be $180,000 for this period, they came in at $210,000, we've already taken $40,000 off the bill because we understand that there were certain things that we explored and a couple of paths that you were not expecting us to go down. We understand your pain. We're trying to add some value back to you. Just with that simple moment, the client doesn't have to figure out how to have that conversation internally and whether or not to approve the bill or then take fees off. You can be involved in that conversation.
Other areas that saw increases and emphasis areas, communication, which I think was reflected in the stats from the ACC survey as well, that communication skills are really the centerpiece of all this. Being proactive, and as Nat said earlier, it's really about spotting the problems before they occur. I mean, every client we talk to wishes their outside counsel had a crystal ball to be able to tell them, what do you need to be doing to prepare for the next thing that may occur. So being proactive in the way you approach, not sitting back and waiting to just be asked to solve a problem, but to help them uncover potential problems before they arise. You can only do that by having a lot of dialogue and discussion about what their business is and what they're trying to achieve. I found it really fascinating that the topics of managing expectations and really client service decreased a little bit. It was not that significant. I have a thought about why that is so, and it's really because those things are expected, baseline. You are expected to manage my expectations. You are expected to provide excellent service because heaven knows every law firm in the country and in this room says somewhere on their website, we deliver extraordinary client service.
Kim has a question.
I just want to go back to value. Can y'all give examples of questions that y'all ask clients in terms of getting them to define value?
Yes.
You never lead with that. You start talking about the relationship and you have to peel back. This is a dynamic interaction of how to draw someone out. So you start in a conversation when you're talking to a client, tell me about what's going on in your world. Get them thinking about things because you can't just lead with that. But then you quickly can say, well, I know you work with other firms, for example. In those other relationships, are there things those firms do that you really admire that maybe we can learn from? And then they'll start talking about the behaviors, and they're able to think about specific little things, whether it's an on-site meeting, whether it's a briefing for the CEO, whether it's internal training and update on an issue, whether it's writing that cover memo to describe the bill, whether it's before the bill gets sent on a deal saying, there's a busted deal here, and I know that you were going to expect the deal to go through. We've got a lot of sunk costs, and investment bankers aren't going to pay the fees. How do you want us to handle the fees so it works within your model? So it's really, I think the key starting point there is ask them to compare your relationship with the other relationships. Because it's hard to be in the middle of that relationship and say, well, I can't really figure out in the moment what I value from our relationship. And does that help, Kim?
And two more questions I'd add to that is in the discussion of fees, are we providing value for the fees and how do you define value is one, a double header question. And then the second one is a question Tara actually shared with me. We were both in-house and comparing notes on our client feedback interview programs in our law firms. And that is, how can we add value to this relationship in ways that don't show up on the bill or that are beyond the legal work that you ask us to provide for you? And it's amazing how different those responses are. But clients are measuring value in terms of efficiency in relation to fees. So I don't care if I'm call in the guy who's the expert on this specific topic. He can give me an answer when I call right there on the telephone for 15 minutes. I don't care if his rate's $1,000. If I call another law firm and the guy's rate is $600 per hour and he can't answer the question and has to go look up something and do the research, you know, they're operating in the moment. So value, again, is defined differently by everyone.
And I guess the third point that we would make on this topic is that it's part of this is making their life easier. I can't tell you how often a client will say, I would love for them to do CLE, and they ask me all the time, but I don't know what they're good at CLE. So you could actually come in and say that CLE topic. Every one of your clients wants you to say, we just did a CLE program that was well received. We've got it in the can. Would you like to do us because we know it's an important topic to you? They don't want you to ask the open question, can we do a CLE for you? They want to have 3 choices. Which one of these resonates? You can take that same theory and apply it to value. Here are 4 things that we are doing with other firms that they really value. Are any of these of interest to you? Or how could we or should we tweak that to align your goals with our capabilities? Does that help? Anything we're missing on the topic of value that you're experiencing in your own law firms?
Yes. Oh, hold on. Let's get a mic.
We're going to try and do the mic.
I work at Ballard Spahr and I interview the firm's clients. That is my job there.
Congratulations.
It is a great job.
You have the best job in the world. And the most information. And you know the truth about every relationship.
That is true. I also keep a lot of secrets.
You have the trust.
What I have found sometimes is that the client cannot necessarily define what is of value to them. And so I think there is great opportunity there for the people in this room and for the lawyers to try to define the value for the client to become more enmeshed in the relationship. And I have tried the suggesting things like you just talked about. And I've gotten mixed results on that because sometimes the client is just not focused. They know that they want value, but they just can't articulate it. So I have used that as an opportunity to talk to the lawyers about what else they can offer the client so that we drive the conversation about what is valuable, and it's the things that we're doing well, and we can go back to the client, and I think it further enhances our opportunities there.
And an add-on to that point, and we want to be respectful of all your time, and we know that we're between you and lunch, but we could do a whole 3 hours on how to talk to your clients. But the other thing that's related to what you're talking about is asking too many questions at once creates confusion. So it's great to say, I know value is important to you. Let me think about that. And later this week, I'm going to come back to you with 3 ideas. And let's just talk about that single topic. Have one agenda item in that conversation. And clients love that. It's short, it's focused, it's about a need they've identified, and you're being proactive in the response and demonstrating a thoughtfulness that you heard what they said. So we're going to skip the second audience participation question with the app unless you feel like we have time. Should we try it? Okay.
Was it a yes, we have time? Do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So we want to hear from you. Open your apps, and we want to hear from you about how your firms are talking to your clients.
Okay, and then because we can't drill down into all the nuances of all these different methodologies, we want to just do a simple exercise of the low-tech variety on the leadership visits. So leadership visits, how many of your firms do leadership visits? Raise them high. Okay, and is that a managing partner doing those visits? Keep your hands up. Is that you participating in those leadership visits? A lot of hands are going down. On those leadership visits that the managing partners are doing, are they taking really great notes? Yes? Awesome. And anybody out there have law firm managing partners who are doing, and I cannot remember who said this to me, but it's stuck and it's made me laugh every time. Drive-by client feedback visits. I see a client at the United Way suffer and say, hey, how are things going? I know you just closed that transaction with Craig here. And they say, we got the deal done. Fantastic. That's client feedback. So variety.
Last chance before I close the poll. Fascinating. No surprise, random acts of feedback. I would say that even with the relationship partner visits and the leadership visits, a lot of those are thank you visits, a lot of those are just checking in visits, a lot of those are business development visits and looking for ways to expand the relationship, not true feedback. True feedback is asking about their needs and responding to it. Thanks for sharing. So, every firm is different. Every firm is individual. Anybody that's heard us ever talk before, there's the best quote ever from an in-house counsel, Laura Stein from Clorox. One size fits one. The assumption you make about the general counsel at your biggest client or the CEO of that client or the CFO client and what their needs are can be validated. That same thing that they prioritize is not the same priority for the deputy general counsel or the assistant general counsel or the paralegal who actually is billing 2,000 hours on work to that client or working on matters that you're billing and spending 2,000 hours of lawyer time working with that internal paralegal of the client. So one size fits one, no, every individual client need.
And that also applies to the way your firm approaches client feedback. Your firm may be only comfortable having somebody from within the firm, managing partner, marketing professional, client service director, client service partner, go do the visits. Others may say, you know, we think it's better to just offload it entirely and to send a third party. Others find it more successful to do a combination of the above. So, you know, there's not, again, a one-size-fits-all strategy that works for how you incorporate feedback into your firm.
And the most important, anytime any of your lawyers go to visit their client and they say they're asking for feedback, there's an implication that you're trying to create a conversation. It's a feedback loop. It's, you said this, I'm going to do the following. Thank you for sharing your needs. Here's how we're going to react to them. We've been doing this together for 8 or 9 years now, and I think 8 years, I believe. 2007. And one of the first experiences we ever had working together to do client feedback was at a very large company that had 50 different subsidiaries, and each of those subsidiaries was hiring the same firm to do different aspects of work. Of course, they wanted a consolidated bill. The firm heard that feedback and they said, we have to be able to give them this data. We have to streamline our information. We have all these different entities we're billing to. They spent like the next 6 months internally trying to figure out how to perfect the communication around the invoice. But guess what they forgot to do? Tell the client that they were working on the problem. So that's what feedback is. You just told me something that you need. I'm telling you I'm going to work on it. And they don't want the solution. They just want to know that they've been heard and that you're working towards the solution. So the things that we've been talking about, you know, the most pressing issues, the things that really matter, staying ahead of issues, reducing costs, too much work, too few resources, staying on top of change, demonstrating value.
Repeat.
Repeat, repeat, repeat. This is what matters. This is how you stand out from the crowd. And why does all this matter? Why do we care about this? Come on. Competition. Competition. There are law firms lined up to China who can add and want to do good legal work for us. There are 100 lawyers capable of handling every matter that crosses my desk. Smart is why you got in the door. How you manage the relationship is what keeps you inside. Every client has this thought. They have choices.
One of my favorite interviews I conducted just this week, it was a telephone interview, and the gal was, her IP lawyer at her law firm was also a mentor. And they had asked the firm for a proposal to help with some patent troll litigation defense. And they ended up hiring another firm. And the partners at the firm who was, I'm her mentor, I'm an IP lawyer. What? We have litigators. Why are we not doing this? And yet, when I did the prep call with the partners to ask them about it, they were like, well, we haven't asked her why she chose somebody else. And I'm like, what do you mean you haven't asked her? So I asked her. When I talked to her on the telephone, you know what she said? I went with this other law firm because they have a guy who does this. And he's done it for another company similar to ours that has a lot of IP issues and a lot of patent troll issues. And you know what? He gets the economics of it. He knows that we can't be spending a lot of money on these pesky patent trolls, so that's why I went with him. The competition is crazy, even in the most secure relationships, because the clients need the most efficient, business-focused solution to their problem that they can get. And that was the head of Intel litigation who said, there are 100 lawyers capable of handling every matter that crosses my desk. I pick up the phone and call the person with whom I have the best relationship and who answers their phone, which I thought was really interesting too.
So we're going to apply some of these topics. Quick review. We're going to give you a scenario in a moment. We're going to ask you to turn to the person to your left or right to discuss a possible outcome. But these are the areas that your clients are most thinking about, the critical performance areas. Do you have best practices about communication put in place for every client need? Communication 101, what's the most valuable piece of communication that is most often used? This is not a hard question. I'm not trying to throw red herring like Daniel Pink. Email. You know what the biggest gripe about email is from your clients? Subject line abuse. FYI is not a subject that is acceptable to anyone. If you are GE, how many emails do they have that have the subject line GE in them? How can they find the information that you're trying to give them? If it's a litigation or a matter, litigation, matter, action required. Use that subject line. They value it. I literally got an email from a partner at a law firm last week that it was an attachment, a PDF attachment from his secretary saying, please see the attached communication from our managing partner. And I said, well, I see it as an attachment. I'm about done with it. You know, think about that. Complacency. Do not assume that anything that happened last year, last quarter, last month, or last week with your clients will ever happen again in the relationship you have. Too often we hear about that horror story, which is clients never fire firms, they just stop sending them new matters. Clients are keenly aware of credit disputes. They sense it when somebody is hoarding. They sense it when a relationship partner is not allowing other people into the relationship. And they sense when they most appreciate, I'd say one of the questions we ask on the whole value line is, what do you most value in your relationships with outside counsel? A lot of clients respond, you know what I really value the most is when they admit to me they're not the right person to handle this, and direct me to someone who can do it more efficiently or has greater expertise. What we really want to know is who is best suited to handle this matter in the most efficient way. The worst example of law firm strategic planning, client team planning, client relationship planning is a bunch of lawyers sitting around a room and thinking about what the client should start doing for them. Right. Don't make assumptions. Let's move. Daniel Pink, problem solving, problem finding, that's really what we're talking about. Manage their expectations all the time. All right. This was an interview I did, and I loved it. So we got a variety of firm sizes in here. This one I think is pretty relatable. And this is one of those, we hear a lot of the same stuff over and over again. Like I'm sure those of you who went to the GC panel are like, wow, the same GC panel said it last year, and the year before that, and the year before that. But this is something that's different that I'm beginning to sense. And so this is why we selected this case study. So it's a 200 lawyer regional firm. I went to interview an energy client of theirs. It's a 30-year-long relationship. Very sophisticated legal department, 24 members. They do a lot of different work for the firm. Everything from immigration to real estate and construction to not a lot of energy regulatory, but they do provide a little bit of advice on that, but a whole smattering of different kinds of work, and a lot of different lawyers within the firm who do work for it. So in preparation for the interview, I'm talking to the general counsel.
to the primary relationship partner. And there's a new general counsel in place. And her predecessor retired, and the relationship partner was retiring, like moving to Florida in a few weeks. And
Did you
not
hear that?
practicing.
Retiring.
Retiring.
The act of retiring is
Not
ongoing and in process. That was what
preparing
was
to
heard.
retire, not stepping down his practice, not thinking about it, but moving to Florida. And
I'm actually in the process of retiring right now.
apparently, this same partner was trying to figure out how to transport his Mercedes to Florida to his new residence, and the gal, the broker who was involved in that, was also named Laura, because he called and left me a funny message about getting his car transported. And I called him back and I was like, Tom, you might be trying to talk to somebody else, because I can help you with a lot of things, but I'm not going to drive your car to Florida. Anyway, they've also had, as do many of your firms, a little bit more fluidity in your firms. You've got leaving associates who don't stick around. You've got laterals coming and going. So I go in to do the interview, and I talk to like 8 or 9 people, and not one of them, including the new GC, had any clue that Tom had retired and moved to Florida.
You can't make this stuff up.
You can't make this stuff up. But what they did have was really grave concerns about the way the firm had handled the communication on the attorney departures. And so they're like, I found out that my primary contact left the firm and went to a competitor when I got the out of office reply that said they were no longer at the firm. Or another one, I got word that the partner or the associate had left the firm when they called to try to solicit business from me at their new law firm. And it was just, I'm just sitting there going, I have to present all of this at a retreat in 3 weeks. It's going to be a nightmare. So thinking about the information to action conundrum here, because we've got a lot of information here. I've given you some of the details of it. I did a debrief meeting with a handful of people on the team, the firm's managing partner and the marketing director, to talk in depth about this after they'd had a chance to read the report. But you've got to go back and make some recommendations about what they need to do in this relationship. So, what advice would you give the law firm? Talk to your neighbor.
Talk to your neighbor. You have 90 seconds. Wait. You two need to talk. So we'll skip the next one. It's 10 after. So, come away with a couple of best practices. That's easy. But then you close with that. Okay. I don't understand. We're still good. No, we're still going.
Oh, perfect.
All right. Timer's done. How we doing?
In real life, you get a lot more time to figure out the solutions to this problem,
But in real time, there's a lot less people thinking about the solution to the same problem. Do we have a volunteer? Who's got an idea?
I'm at Latham & Watkins, and some of the things I would offer in terms of advice would be to set up a meeting with the new GC and their legal department and go in and offer a brief sort of history of a relationship, right? sort of like what we've done for you up to this point. And then just as you would do an org chart of the client itself, sort of like their legal department and who's who, and do that so they can see that you understand them, you would mirror and do an org chart of your own legal team working on these matters, and then follow up as a sort of like these are the go-tos for you depending on the expertise that you're looking for. So it's a nice, quick little visual way of them knowing who to call. And then do a brief of ongoing matters to the GC. I think that'll be the most important for them and get them up to speed on anything you're working on for them. And then underlie that with a timeline of those matters and sort of like this is where we're at, both in milestones as well as billings.
Great ideas.
That's super from the thinker perspective too, and a lot of our targets are, but who's got a feeler hat on?
Down here? Oh.
I think there's got to be some damage control here in a big way, because a 30-year relationship and you didn't know the GC was leaving, I mean, that's not an overnight decision. So I would elevate this, and it's not good enough just with a new relationship partner. I think you've got to get a managing partner or a team in place, and all of that would very valuable, and of course you've got to bring all that with you. But this, you're in repair mode here, and what a perfect opportunity. We were discussing that the new GC, who may have a very strong relationship with another law firm, that he or she may have also a 30-year relationship. What a great excuse to boot these guys out and bring her relationship with her.
So that was
Yeah.
the number one recommendation we made and came to agreement with the client team and the managing partner. We did it is, managing partner, you have got to get yourself to this client. You have got to eat crow, as we say in the South, and apologize for the poor communication. And you've got to build some bridges with this new GC. Maureen? Oh, hold on.
Was there any thought, two questions, what happened? We want to know what happened if you save the client.
This is happening in real time.
It's happening, okay now. My other question is, was there any thought to having the relationship partner who's going to Florida and worried about his Mercedes, write some sort of letter?
Stop on his way down?
Yeah, exactly. Write some sort of apology or, trying to make amends and say this was his issue to try to save his old firm from losing the client.
Oh, I don't need this. I have one. It's great. We actually thought about that, but the challenge was this relationship partner didn't want to let go. And he was, still, he came back, he participated in this meeting from Florida on the telephone and basically said, well, I think we need to, and named like 3, excuse me for our older gentlemen in the room, 3 middle-aged white guys in the firm who don't really have much to do at all with the client to be the new kind of team to design the repair plan. And so I pulled the managing partner aside before we had this meeting and I was like, do you want my filter on or do you want my filter off? And he's like, be nice, but have your filter off. And so what other things that we heard, and because I talked to 8 or 9 people, this was a woman taking the role after an older man. She's not young, but not nearing retirement. And there was a lot of people on the team who were young and a couple others who were nearing retirement. So they needed to see the next generation. So we proposed for the managing partner to go back and be the face and take the fall and be the apology. And these are things that are going on in our firm because they were concerned about the health of the firm because people were leaving. So lots of conversation, and we can talk about this over lunch as well too.
And really this example of what we're talking about, these are some of the core best practices and tips about understanding your client's needs. I said it earlier, I'm going to repeat myself. Any assumption you have about what's going on in a client relationship can be proven. Having the right person in place, who's going to have that conversation? How are they going to be accountable? What role are they going to play ongoing? Because it's great to send the managing partner down, but then that managing partner is going to go on the next client visit. And is there a sense of confidence in the client that this person, while it was nice they came to visit me, are they going to be engaged going forward? So talk to your clients, understand their needs, understand all of those things that we were talking about earlier and throughout this program in the critical performance areas about understanding how they define value, understanding what's going to make them look good, make their life easier, demonstrate that you understand those business. That's what you need to do every day when you think about how you're going to approach, pursue, and retain your most important clients and drive the ultimate goal, which is client loyalty and referrals. And Laura is going to share with you in our close another thing that she heard from a recent interaction at the hospital.
I'm obsessed with Danny Meyer. And food. But,
A food entrepreneur who is obsessed with client service. I can't
Exactly.
imagine why Laura would
It's
be obsessed with this
fantastic.
person.
So towards the end of our day with the folks at Union Hospitality, and there were other businesses in the room, but a lot of catering companies and other hospitality type industry representatives, but they talked about, the correlation between success with your external customers and clients really starts with success with your employees. And they spend a lot of time talking about who you hire, how you hire them, how you train them. My first career was a very small retail company called Parisian Department Stores, for anybody who grew up in the South and is familiar with them. It was the Nordstrom of the South. And our CEO, Donald Hess, always said at store openings, we hire nice people. We hire people with great qualities because we can teach them skills, but we can't teach them to genuinely care. And Danny's philosophy is very similar too. We live in a world where you encounter gatekeepers and you encounter agents, people who are actively out there making you feel like they're on your side. They're trying to help you be successful. It's the same thing we hear from law firms when their clients complain about, we need people who can help us get things done. We need people who can be creative when we run across a problem and look for a way around the barrier. We need agents. We need people who are supporting us. So we talked about what qualities people need to build trust internally in their organizations and to build trust with their clients. And they use this richest acronym, and it's RESPECT. Challenging in an industry when 50% of the people in our law firms are referred to as nons. So I have to tell you, Tara and I were a little bit discouraged in this. Integrity, courtesy, humility, empathy, self-awareness, and trust are the big ones. So in summary, those are things that we think of as kind of touchy-feely, softy, but they're really critical. And then just as a total other aside, I don't have data or statistics or research to support this other than my observations, but we hear a lot in the marketplace about firms, unprompted. I'm going to single out two here, Baker Donaldson, who's represented, and Alston & Bird. We don't work with Alston & Bird, but we hear a lot of clients talk about them in the marketplace, and you know what? Both of those law firms are consistently named as best places to work, and not best law firms to work, best companies to work. And I really think that reflects Danny's philosophy on what it takes to build trust and to have a richest focus. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
It's been fun.